Well, more than a couple weeks have passed since the opening of the transfer portal. Has UCLA underwhelmed, or are they on their way to success in 2025 and 2026?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free, whether it's your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. If you're ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed, head on over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. Where we get started today is, of course, the transfer portal. UCLA has lost 6 to this point at this recording to the portal. UCLA at this point in this recording has got 4 commits. So where does that leave UCLA? We were all feeling high and mighty when Donovan Dent committed and John Rothstein came out of CBS Sports saying, hey, you know, UCLA will be a top 5 team if they have Donovan Dent. Now that was with the caveat that UCLA brought the majority of their contributors back, including a Mara. Well, Mara is in the portal. He could do a few things, but coming back to UCLA is not one of them at this moment. Less than 1% chance. You never know. Crazy things could happen, but that's just not happening. So Mick Cronin goes over and gets a bunch of commits. UCLA, after the Dent commit, where they reportedly spent as much as $3 million in NIL deals or deal to bring over Donovan Dent from New Mexico, UCLA then has a few commits from Jamerson, from Brown, from Booker, all guys you're wondering, is this just the tail end because UCLA had to go after a post this late in the portal? Is this just a mixture of guys? Some of them they need, maybe one more they can get in the portal, but is this leaving UCLA looking a little underwhelming? Mind you, this is the same coaching staff, Mick Cronin, that put together a top 10 transfer class in last offseason. And you could say, all right, quite a few of those guys are able to hit. You could say, okay, Tyler Bilodeau, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, all returning. Then you see William Kyle leaving, and you're like, okay. You mix in Dominic Harris, he's to the portal, and you're like, oh, okay. So where does that leave UCLA? It's not everybody, but that's just off the top of my head. What does UCLA need? And with Kobe Johnson graduating, you'd say most of those guys hit. Didn't lead to anything past the second round, but how is this team going to go? If I asked you, according to the 24/7 Sports transfer portal rankings, as of this Monday morning, as of April the 7th, a couple weeks into the portal, where does UCLA rank? The Bruins actually rank in the outside the top 30. UCLA ranks 33rd in the country with 4 commits in terms of ranking and upside in terms of points, with a 5-star, and yet with their commits, with their points, and what the rankings have them, UCLA with one of the best recruits in the country in the portal, with multiple recruits, still do not rank higher than 32 teams. And you're like, what is this? Is this talent and continuity? Is Mick Cronin back on the warm seat because UCLA was unable to come to terms or meet demands or get on the right page? Whatever the story is between Aday Mara and Mick Cronin and how that played out, or how to build this roster with some of the other guys leaving, is what's going on. Okay, leaves a lot to be desired, right? If UCLA had that post presence, got a backup big like a Xavier Booker, you would think, oh, that would be a fun proposition. You get an athletic guy who could shoot it a little bit with some potential mixed with Mara, that would be fun. Or even Jamerson as a backup big to backup Mara. That's just not the case. But here's some reason for hope. All right, here's reason for hope. I was looking at last year's rankings in 2024. So UCLA currently ranks 33rd. So I went to last year's rankings, went all the way down and saw, okay, in the top 10, who went deep in the tournament? Arkansas, obviously, with the new coaching staff, had a lot of commits. Coach Cal going there. 5 4-star recruits got to the second weekend. Indiana didn't make it. Kansas didn't make it deep in the tournament. Lost to Arkansas early. St. John's didn't make it deep. Kentucky got deep. West Virginia, no. Alabama, of course, made some noise. Washington, no. Michigan, some big noise. UCLA, second week. And so maybe being in the top 10, it's not all it's built up to be. And two, with the talent that was good in the portal, UCLA brought all the guys they wanted back. Bilodeau, Clark, Daly Jr. That's the guys. Those are the core three of the transfers from a year ago that brought them back. So then I keep going down the rankings. I find myself looking at who is in a similar spot to where UCLA was a year ago. And I saw two teams. One, you have Maryland, who's ranked 34th. Maryland, who I think with Kevin Willard's style, the relationship Cronin has, I know Kevin Willard's no longer at Maryland, but you thought about two teams, opposite ends of the country, the coastal ends of the Big Ten Conference. Maryland went out there, a couple of 4-star commits, a 3-star commit, similar rating in transfer portal recruiting a year ago, and they were a really good team. The top of the Big Ten, a team that was better than UCLA, beat UCLA, and was making themselves heard in the NCAA tournament going much further. Okay. Then you look at who was one spot behind Maryland. Florida. Florida had 35, was ranked 35, 3 commits, and they're in the national championship game. And one of the best players was the guy they found from Iona. You mix in Arizona with 3 commits. They were competitive into the Big 12 tournament championship game, and their best player was from the portal. So what Cronin was talking about in that season-ending loss about talent and continuity, 2 seasons ago, UCLA had a lot of talent. They all graduated. They all left. Then last year, Cronin saw, hey, we needed a lot more talent because he couldn't recruit it in high school, couldn't get it in the transfer portal, went after talent. Had a little bit of continuity, but in terms of Dylan Andrews coming in back, but there was not a lot of continuity. And then Sebastian Mack, of course, and the Diamar a little bit. Went after talent. So this year, he's got talent with continuity mixed with veteran talent, and this could be something special where maybe these are guys under the radar who could develop. That's the hope, right? You look at the spots who are all in similar rankings in the transfer portal from a year ago. Arizona, fighting deep in the tournament, got to a second weekend. Florida, Maryland. These are all teams, UCLA, in some aspects, Maryland and Arizona more than Florida, were, similar talent levels with returning transfer talent. Coaches that have been there a year or two in some respects. And UCLA beat one like Arizona. They were ranked there, found their footing, and made it deeper in the tournament. Florida, slow builds, and then boom, they're in the national championship game. I'm not saying UCLA's destined for a national championship game. It is, a little underwhelming with what they've got so far. That's kind of my thought outside of Donovan Dent. Of course, Dent was huge. You get a superstar like that. You see how Florida got that a couple of years ago out of Iona. And that's how you can build. Problem is UCLA only gets Dent for a year, and they need him to be exquisite immediately in his solo year of UCLA playing. Okay, the only time he can play UCLA. But there is a precedent for, even though UCLA's down this year in the transfer rankings, you mix in what they have from last year returning. You have a youngster like Perry waiting for more minutes, potentially the red shirts hopefully waiting to contribute. These new guys Cronin's going to bring in that are potential, looking for new opportunities, looking to fill a role. And Cronin could have a shorter leash. He could have a smaller rotation. And that's what UCLA tends to do when they play better with Mick Cronin. A shorter rotation, players know their roles, and that's when they play their best Mick Cronin basketball. This year it was a little different where they had 10 guys, 11 guys heading into the year with a lot of potential to play in the rotation. It seemed like they didn't really define what it was going to be. And that's how it kind of played out. Up and down play. Now you know, guys, what they're going to work on in the offseason, how to get better, how to play under Mick Cronin. You mix in a true Mick Cronin-like point guard who can play defense, shoot, rebound. You go after a wing like Jamar Brown who can hopefully make the next step up to the Big Ten. You mix in Jamerson, you mix in Booker, Dent, with the guys returning, a shorter rotation, and that could be a UCLA team that surprises. The ranking, underwhelming. The potential, though, you even look from last year to this year, there are some parallels. I'm not going to say they're turning into Florida and they're going to score 100 points a game and be exciting and get to the national championship game, but to a second weekend and potential for more competing in the Big Ten, That is certainly on the table for UCLA. Speaking of on the table, the UCLA women, disappointing finish to the end of the year. Then I was looking at some way too early top 25 preseason rankings. Of course, that's the best time to look at them, right after the national championship game was played. And where do you think the UCLA women are? That's right. I'll tell you next on Locked On UCLA. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with the TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who will give your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, where you get real-time updates on their progress and you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Cruising on into the second segment here of Locked On UCLA. Hey, the UCLA women, of course, in an unspectacular fashion, saw their season come to an end at the hand of the now national champion UConn Huskies, who, as expected, went on to go beat down the South Carolina Gamecocks. It was pretty simple. I figured the winner of UCLA-UConn would go beat South Carolina, but I knew that if UCLA-South Carolina would have been a better game, UConn was not going to get stopped if they got past UCLA. And boy, did they ever. They destroyed the Bruins in the Final Four and gave an equal beatdown to South Carolina for the second time this season in the national championship game. All right, turn the page. What does that mean for Cori Close? Well, there's a lot to work on for sure, but I was looking at ESPN's way too early rankings. Best time to look at those in 25 to 26. What does that mean for UCLA? One, Paige Beckers is leaving UConn. Huge piece. UConn's got a lot of talent, but a huge piece gone. For USC, Juju Watkins has an ACL injury. Could keep her out as long as a year, more, less. Who knows what that means for Juju, considering her injury came so late in this season. It might hurt her in the next season. So UCLA is clearly the preseason favorite in the Big Ten, clearly a top 5 team. And ESPN, with Charlie Cream, who is the women's basketball bracketologist, has UCLA as the preseason number 1. Now, I've seen a couple of odds of sorts and all right, who might be betting favorites of different things. And maybe UCLA is not number 1, which I think is ridiculous. But UCLA preseason, way too early, top 25, number 1 in the country, as expected. This is what I thought was interesting about Charlie Cream. They can bring everybody back. And as I've said, Sienna Betts, Lauren Betts' little sister, coming, the number 2 recruit in the country. We're bringing the number 2 recruit in the country who can add some depth to the post. You bring in Charlize Ledger-Walker, who's already there in the program, been around, knows the team. All she got to do is be healthy and be ready to play. And when she did play, she was one of the best players in the country, one of the best players on the West Coast, and was maybe that missing piece to this year's team. Maybe. In a certain moment, right? We saw Tamia Gardner shine in the Elite Eight. We saw Barker as a big piece for UCLA in Big Ten play, make some big moments happen. This could have been Charlize Ledger-Walker's moment if she was healthy and ready to play. Instead, she's expected to give a full season's effort in 2025 to 26. Huge, 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 huge. Mix in the return of Lauren Betts, Kiki Rice, Jaquez Jones. This is a team that's looking even better. And with a year-to-year growth potentially of Elena Artisalo, UCLA could look even better. Now, what I found interesting with what Charlie Cream wrote about the Bruins for ESPN was he said the entire rotation is expected back except for Janiyah Barker and Angela Dugalich. Dugalich is a player that could still have another year of eligibility due to COVID. Barker is a junior heading into her senior season. And I've not seen anything, to my knowledge, other that's come out publicly like this, like ESPN, where saying Janiyah Barker's not expected back. Now, is she going to go test the WNBA draft waters? It'd be interesting. I do know it'd be a roster crunch with all the talent that's on UCLA's roster. There's still some freshmen this last season that got limited playing time. And you mix in, okay, Betts is coming, Sienna Betts. Charlize Ledger-Walker will be an active participant next season. Who's losing their spot? This was already a deep team, getting deeper and better, and that still wasn't enough to beat UConn. Still wasn't enough to beat USC 2 out of 3 times, although USC has seen some key players depart to the portal, mixed with Juju's injury. I wonder what that's going to look like for next season. UCLA, though, is the preseason best team on the West Coast, in the Big Ten, across the country, preseason number 1. You look up and down the rankings, you see South Carolina would be preseason number 2. Definitely number 3 is UConn, or number 2, whatever they're going to be, with Fudd mixing in with Sarah Strong and the rest of that team. Texas should be very fun. Duke, LSU with Johnson returning, and Oklahoma getting the top recruit in the country. Should be a very stacked and fun year next year in women's college basketball. And while we're disappointed, UCLA got to their first ever Final Four in the NCAA era of women's college basketball. Huge. Cori got some milestone victories, including winning a Big Ten tournament championship, becoming the all-time winningest head coach in UCLA women's basketball history. And what she wants is to put that banner up at UCLA, be the first. Put that banner in Poly that gets recognized, doesn't have to worry about technicalities, and just do it. The problem is, I've heard from my own UCLA friends, seen some from the UCLA brass and different things. It seems like there's disappointment. Every time UCLA is waiting to get there, there's a little bit of disappointment. But I remember reading an article, I think, posted about ESPN and why they predicted the things that they did for UConn to go win it. Obviously, very, very good. But when it comes to experience in winning these championships, teams have to get there, lose, and then win. That's just how it's happened in women's college basketball. When you have an all-time dominant legacy like UConn's been, South Carolina's had to lose and then get back there and win it a few times. All these other teams have had to get there, suffer a disappointment, and then battle to win a championship. Absolutely battle. All right. Generally, in some aspects, knocking off UConn in the process. Because UConn still went almost a decade without winning a national championship. Took one of their best players of all time almost her entire career to get a chance at it. So UCLA, with one of the deepest rosters, getting a taste of it in the Sweet 16, coming back. Getting a taste of it in the Sweet 16 again, getting deeper to the Final Four. Now got that taste of the Final Four. They're all come back. Now they know what to expect. They've seen the glitz, the glamour, the expectations of the Final Four. Next year, it's not in Tampa. It is not across the country in Tampa Bay. The women's basketball Final Four is in Phoenix, Arizona. So you speak about advantage, right? Instead of going across the country, UCLA is probably not, I don't know where the regionals are next year, but UCLA, if they go deep in the tournament, they're going to host the first rounds unless they change that rule at some point. I don't know if they will, but for now, you expect them to host. You play in the westernmost regional pod in the Sweet 16 Elite 8, and the Final Four would be basically in your own backyard in Phoenix. So no traveling whatsoever next year with all the experience of this year. Okay? You say, okay, there's a lot of UConn fans this year, probably a lot of South Carolina fans, a lot of non-UCLA fans who are very close to Tampa, or a lot closer than it is in Los Angeles or Westwood. Next season, much closer. Next year, you've got to determine Lauren Betts, who took her career to the next level. Kiki Rice doing the same thing. All these players who can hopefully get better with more talent and more depth behind them. But I don't want to gloss over the fact that, okay, Duga Leach may not return, according to Charlie Cream. Janiah Barker not returning would be unique, but I think more scoring and more opportunities for Ledger Walker would be okay if Barker does not return. But I'd love to see if Barker had a bigger role or a different role than as a sixth player coming off the bench, how she would blossom in the UCLA uniform. She knew her role. I saw, I think, Ben Bolch wrote an article, and it was already talked about, well documented, that Barker knew her role going from the number one option coming to UCLA. You're not even maybe number 5 for UCLA. She wasn't. She was 5th, 6th. And that's a tough thing coming from top option in an SEC team to best team in the country, one of the best teams in the country, where you're 5th, 6th option. It's a unique challenge that it comes down to when you're battling, when you're learning how to battle for minutes. And then with Ledger Walker, who's clearly got that championship pedigree of sorts, right? Winning the tournament, the Pac-12 tournament with Washington State, Ledger Walker beating a top UCLA team with her being all by herself and then getting injured in the process, having to wait through the injury process. So it is interesting to see that Janiah Barker may not return, according to Charlie Cream. and then Angela Dugalich might not. One thing you'd notice, two of those players also turned over the basketball quite a bit. They accounted between Barker and Dugalich, I did the math, of UCLA's turnovers, which were a lot, including a bazillion in the Final Four. 25% of the entire season's turnovers came from either Barker or Dugalich. Now, they had a lot of positive moments, and I don't want to reflect on that as their final moments as a Bruin, but if that's the end of their UCLA career, and we're talking about what cost them a chance to win a national championship this year, to play in even the national championship game, turnovers and lack of forcing as many cost the Bruins. Absolutely did. You're losing 25% of your turnovers. A little bit of scoring, gaining, I think, a lot more scoring, a lot more veteran savvy, a lot more talent with what might be exiting. Talented players for sure, but that's how deep UCLA is. You can lose a 6th player of the year, a top 3 overall recruit, who was a preseason, close to, I think, a WNBA mock draft I saw. Well, Barker could have been top 10 pick in the lottery for the WNBA draft, right? Top 10 pick in the first round. And then next thing you know, that's just your 5th or 6th option, and you replace that person with someone better. That's why UCLA is getting this postseason preseason, way too early season hype for next year, which I would think is expected. They were number 2 heading into the 23-24 season. Expectations were the same this year, and they're even higher and greater for next season. Now that Juju and her status is just unknown. She could come back early, she might not, who knows? But UCLA has the talent and the depth because USC's already lost some players, not even Juju, to the portal. UCLA has to. If they're going to break down that door, get that championship, next year is certainly the year. And they're already starting to talk about it. I just wonder who might leave in the process. If Barker does leave, if Dugalich is done with her career at UCLA, we will talk about it when that moment happens. For some, great couple of years, or for Barker, solid year. But it does open the door for more playing time for the new incoming Bruins or returning off of injury. It'll be fascinating to talk about just the same. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, you can easily lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO that gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's complete financial command center, right? You can track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place. So just stop managing your money. You can start building wealth, put it all together. And here's the thing. You start using Monarch, you can realize how much you're spending on those food delivery services. Spending that much? Now you can budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. It's going to do it for us here on Locked On UCLA. Zach with you guys. If there's any news, I know spring practice is slowly getting going. You've got the mixture of the portal still an option for the UCLA men. What does that look like for the UCLA women's team if people are leaving, going to the WNBA? What does that look like for the UCLA team in general? We'll find out. We'll talk about all that and more on Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Thanks for all your views. Can't wait for more throughout the month of April and into the spring sports and into more off-season talk. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.